want to personally thank you for showing up. Okay, I also want to thank the Women's Center for trying to raise awareness about such an important topic like bridging the gaps is. Okay? Today, I have 3 stories for you guys about bridging gaps. Just 3 stories. I decided that the best way to explain how I bridge a gap is by sharing some of my personal experiences, because, being perfectly honest, I honestly don't know when this happened or if I was able to even bridge these gaps we talked about. So the first story begins with little Luis, aka me. Back in the day when I had spiky hair and really, really baggy clothes, because I thought that was super cool at the time. Okay? And this was during my high school times. Okay? I went to a school that was made of 50% Hispanics, 4% African American, and 10% other. I was the first Hispanic male valedictorian of my high school. Okay? Something that was really hard for me to understand given the dominant Hispanic ratio. Okay? However, my high school, without me knowing, was preparing me for something bigger. It was preparing me for what Sewanee would be like. I came to Sewanee as an undocumented student. Okay? I came to Sewanee as a student who, once at the age of 12, had to cross the Arizona desert in order to get to the United States. And coming to Sewanee, I was desperately looking for a place that would accept me for who I am. Okay? However, I was in for a surprise. When I arrived to Sewanee, I began to notice the lack of Hispanic people. Okay? It was great to interact with people from different backgrounds and ethnicities. It was really, really exciting. However, at some point I began asking myself, where are all the Mexicans at? I guess I don't make them around here. More than this, I began to feel excluded because the South has a particular different culture than Chicago or Mexico, where I'm from. Everyone around Sewanee also was very intrigued about my funny accent. People from local counties would ask me, where are you from? And I'd be like, well, Chicago. They're like, no, really, where are you from? And I'd be like, really, no, I'm from Chicago. They're like, no, really, you were not born here, where are you from? These kind of comments made me feel a little bit excluded. For a while, I felt like I was not wanted here. However, once class started and I started to interact with the broader Sewanee community, I found something that was really interesting. People were actually interested in what I had to say. They were really interested and intrigued about that 12-year-old boy who had to cross the desert in order to get to the United States. Honestly, seeing how people were not judging me, it started to give me that sense of belonging. And I guess what I learned from that is that you cannot be afraid to share your story. Everybody's unique. Everybody's different. Okay, you cannot be afraid to share it because you never know the positive impact that you might have on someone else. Okay, this brings me to my second story. I grew up in a working class family. I'm proud to say that my mother is a salad bar attendant at a local called Golden Corral. I grew up with a lot of financial complications, but I was really blessed by Sewanee and God to be here on a full ride. Okay, Sewanee was really the only school that invested in me. At the time I was undocumented, and not a lot of schools really were willing to give me financial aid. When I came to Sewanee, I barely owned any class dress clothes at all. The only pair of dress pants I owned was from Walmart that my mom bought me for $10.99 on special. They were pretty comfortable. Also, I did not own a blazer, nor did I have a bow tie collection, and nor did I own any Sperry's. Now I do. Seeing everyone around me with such great clothes and parents who had all these degrees definitely made me feel once again like I did not belong here. Make no mistake, I was never embarrassed of my background. I've always been proud of it, but I was just really shocked of how many people's families were so well off. More than this, I felt like I was at a disadvantage. I went to a public school, and many of the students here that I interacted with came from top-notch private schools. All of this added up, and it was very difficult for me to overcome. Every time I went to class, I could not avoid feeling different or left out. However, I was fortunate enough to find professors who supported me and believed in me, and also I was able to find people, my classmates, that every time I struggle, were always there to give me a hand. You know, I guess what the message from this story is, you cannot be afraid to ask for help or ask for questions. We're all going to struggle in life at some point, and an important aspect about bridging the gaps is not being afraid to say, I don't know how to do so. This brings me to my last and final story. Okay, I came to Sewanee also not knowing about anything about fraternities or Greek life. You know, the only thing that I knew about was what I saw in movies, aka American Pie. And being perfectly honest, I really never wanted to partake in that, or nor did I have the money to actually be part of it. However, Sewanee was great because they have so many other alternatives that suit me better. You know, I was able to get involved in Res Life, you know, outreach, Spencer, shout out to all my Spencer people over here, you know, athletics, the Women's Center. You know, honestly, I think that I met more people in those late night studies at Spencer than in a Friday night at a fraternity. You know, I'm sure there's still gaps that I have yet to bridge. You know, life is about bridging gaps, and, you know, however, I believe that bridges are built subconsciously, you know, through experience and understanding. Also, I believe that life is about building bridges rather than trying to fill in or erase the gaps. And I love quotes, you know. For those people that know me, I love motivational quotes, so I'm going to send this speech with one of them. Okay, and there goes. Be kind, work hard, and amazing things will happen, such as building bridges. Thank you.
Naturally bridging the gap here at the bridge. Off to a good start. So when I first received an email from the WIC to speak at this event, the subject line read, "Bridging the Gaps." My initial reaction was that some cyberbullying group was trying to start an initiative to close the gap between my teeth. My sincere apologies to my dentist, Dr. Davis, for failing to wear my glow-in-the-dark retainer. In the very beginning of my Sewanee experience, the first gap that I bridged was the humble 2,000-mile divide between the West Coast and the Cumberland Plateau. Leaving my home in San Diego, California, to come to a small liberal arts college in Tennessee was a risk, and a risk I was willing to take. I remember showing up on move-in day rocking my endless summer tank top, looking mega casual. Shaka bra. I came to Sewanee rather close-minded. I accepted how I was raised, what I was taught, and therefore questioned very little. This resulted, for example, in my mindless and casual use of homophobic language and day-to-day vocabulary. But more on this later. Throughout the past 3 years, and I'm sure many of you can relate, my mind has expanded. Both intellectually and emotionally. Mind-boggling, I know. I attribute much of this to my risk-taking nature. Part of this is my desire to newness or change. I've been to a total of 7 schools, which I assume is more than most. All of these changes have helped me become the person I am today, mainly for the confidence it's instilled in me. New faces and new places are my jam. Sewanee is a place where an open mind and a risk-taking mentality are well accepted. But there really is no perfect place. I could stand here and scratch the surface all day about how to better the community. But over the course of the past few years, I realized that at the end of the day, being confident in who you are, whoever that might be, is the very first step in bridging these gaps. So through this realization, I've learned a few lessons. Even the most confident of people have their low points. Riddle me that. So, for example, when asked during a proctor interview what your theme song might be, don't drop that thun-thun-thun. Maybe shouldn't be your go-to. Real talk. Then again, crying doesn't help either. Or even making the freshman year rookie mistake to use the ATC women's bathroom lobby as a co-ed study space. John Black? If you strike up conversation with a random stranger on the elliptical next to you, you might end up with free housing and a lime green Camaro for the summer. Yes, this actually happened. At Swanee, I've also come to the realization that it's okay not to have an identified friend group, but rather a cross-section of friends. Most importantly, I'm confident in my ability to identify and to relate to these friends, even throughout the vast circles they're in. Confidence is contagious. Like when my good friend Elise fed me Pop-Tarts while our group was lost, freezing, and terrified. I was scared, but her confidence warmed me up, pun intended. One reality I'm quite confident in is that the amount of times I've scanned my ID at the pub exponentially exceeds the amount of times I've scanned it at Fowler. I blame you, Jimmy. I learned, and I'm still learning, how to be confident in my own shoes. When I see people who have confidence, I admire them. I, for example, may or may not like to unapologetically use the words YOLO or gnarly in my day-to-day vocabulary. Sue me. Further, after 3 years of extensive and collaborative research, my regression analysis suggests that the name of the street a Greek organization is on has no correlation to the degree of fun one might have and is therefore insignificant. But if you want to try and prove me wrong, I'm free on Friday. Swanee has blessed me with so many opportunities, being a 4-year athlete, Greek life, Arcadians, climbing the Great Wall of China. Heck, I'm living in a house with 5 boys this year. The list could seriously go on forever. My various involvement throughout campus has really allowed me to build an incredible amount of friendships and ultimately an awesome support system. But back to the more on this later note, one of the greatest lifelong lessons Swanee taught me was that I didn't have to hide the fact that I dated and fell in love with a girl last year. Rather, that I could be proud and confident of that. But even this alone isn't the defining and most important part of myself or my time at this place. So, I leave you today with something we are all far too familiar with. Navigating your years at Swanee is much like navigating McClure. Yeah. The perfect meal at McClure, while few and far between, takes some creativity and risk. Sticking with one line will leave you hungry for more. A good plate might have something from the home line, the vegan line, and most likely copious amounts of hot sauce. Incorporating lines and being a confident risk taker, while taking a little bit more effort, will in the end help you eat well and be well. Shout out to Rick. In reality, there will always be gaps to bridge, including, but not limited to, my 2 front teeth. But with those gaps, there are people that both fill and bridge them. Having confidence in yourself and in others could be the starting block. And y'all, if nothing less, someone please get JoJo to come for spring party before it's too little too late.
When I found out I was going to have to talk after Jenna, I almost quit. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Meg Hall. I'm a senior English major and Women's and Gender Studies minor. And, surprise, I am not totally comfortable offering advice to a room full of peers and professors about how to bridge the gaps here. It's a huge and terrifying topic. Instead, I'm going to be honest and say up front, my whole speech today is itself kind of a gap. Meta, I know. What I mean is that the space between categories is where most of us fall. And it's in these so-called gaps that interesting things actually happen. None of us are just one thing, just female, just queer, just black. And our concerns are intersectional. Like Whitman, we contain multitudes. Sorry about that. The English major requires at least one pretentious quotation per public speech. So you're welcome. Since I've been in Swanee, I've been interested in trying to close these gaps through a lot of different channels. I've worked with the Humanities Program, the Women's Center, the Rethink Task Force, the Bonner Program, Cornerstone Committee, and I've conducted all these one-on-one meetings with leaders across campus to figure out where they felt passed over or lost or confused in this quest to locate the gaps and find some grand final solution to closing them forever. I learned so much, but it can all be summed up in 2 words. Jack shit. I am just as confused and overwhelmed and paralyzed by a sense of powerlessness as I was when I got here as a freshman. Okay, not quite as much, but that's mostly because I developed an alcohol tolerance and friends. Our generation has been called a lot of names. The me generation, the apathetic generation. And once on the newsroom, Aaron Sorkin had one of his characters call us, quote, the worst generation ever. We're not thought of well. Activist types are always asking the internet why we don't act, why we seem so lethargic and postmodern, and the only thing I've learned in my pursuit of these gaps is what people mistake for lethargy is actually just weariness. We've got a million problems staring us in the face, from sexism to racism to school shootings to neo-colonial economic occupations and wars. And the only way we know how to process them is one at a time. But acting on or for one of those issues means necessarily prioritizing it over another. Taking on one of these labels necessarily means that you're acknowledging it as separate from the other things, which I, for one, am not comfortable doing. As a white, southern, female, legally homeless, college student, public school kid, avid Netflixer, those things aren't different to me. I don't think of my whiteness as separate from my presence in college. In fact, it probably made it a lot easier. My past experience with abuse isn't separate from my roots in Southern culture, and I think my recommendations on Netflix are probably the most insightful peek into myself that exists. But then again, I've been logged into Richard Milby's for 3 years. So maybe not. My labels aren't separate from each other. So the problem as I see it is that we now know this new information, that these things aren't separate. But the only discourse that we have to talk about them is one we inherited from a generation that really thought that being a woman and being from Guatemala were separate things. We know they're not now, but we still talk about them like they were. We have AAA, we have OLA, we have Spectrum, GSD House, we have the Women's Center. But none of us really fit into those categories. Even if you're a part of all of them, that's not who you are. We're all orphans of the gaps, wandering from one category to another, wondering why we don't feel at home. And it leads us to do things like ask, how can we close these gaps forever? How can we encompass all the issues? How do we ethically deal with the things that matter? What's the plan? For me, the plan has been to abandon this discourse of separateness. Unfortunately, I have not replaced it with anything. Which leads me to say things like, yeah, sexuality is a spectrum, but so is everything. And to be generally incapable of having a conversation that lasts less than 3 hours. It's not practical. But when it comes down to it, our identities, our real selves, all fall through the cracks. None of us can actually be described by the labels we put on or take off, and at some point we have to just stop doing it. So honestly, I don't think it's possible to bridge the gaps. I don't think it's worth trying to do. I think instead, we should stop talking about the place between categories as some kind of gap, and start talking about it as the place we live. Thanks.
Good job, Meg. For the record, I thought this was a debate about the common source catered by Zaxby's. No, I'm just kidding. Seriously, I am having to see Dr. McCardle is not in here because public speaking to him would be like trying to perform magic on Gandalf. Alright, enough jokes. Now let's try and cry out here. I'd honestly like to thank the WIG for their tireless devotion to the Sewanee community. I don't have enough time to enumerate all they contribute here, but I'd like to especially thank Michelle and Sarah for organizing this right here. Michelle told me that the theme of our talk was bridging the gap. She left us with a lot of liberty. I thought about all the gaps on campus that I feel need bridging. Older and younger students, Greek and non-Greek organizations, students and faculty, students and PPS. While I feel that all of these gaps are significant, I wanted to talk about bridging the gap between you as a student and your friends whom you encounter every day. Before I get there, I want to discuss an idea mentioned really frequently in the Sewanee sphere. Students feel like here in Sewanee, we're here. And then outside of Sewanee, upon leaving the gates, we enter the real world. How often do you hear that? Next year, as seniors, we're going to be thrust into the real world. You know, that place that has Chick-fil-A, air conditioning, and the police aren't as nice as they are here. On the domain, we feel isolated from what happens in the real world. And part of this is true. I have not locked my door since I got here. Walking through Central Campus, seeing the beautiful architecture, landscape, and people feels like a fairy tale beyond this world. And the benevolent cult-like aura around it is undeniable. Despite all the things that make this university a city upon a hill, are we not dealing with real-world problems on this campus? Going off to college is hard no matter who you are. Students often leave behind domestic problems that only worsen in their absence. Family issues like divorce, substance abuse, and death are just a few serious matters that run far too deeply to be stopped by the Sewanee bubble. Furthermore, I am not too naive to believe that equally difficult problems do not occur right here on campus. Sexual assaults, sexual identity crises, substance abuse, bullying, near-death experiences remind us that we are not invincible even on this mountain. At this point, I want to make clear that I love this university more than anything I've ever been a part of, and I'm not bashing it. Cataloging this issue sounds harsh, but Sewanee is like any other human institution, and as such, it is subject to human faults. I do not think that these problems define the university, but cliche, I think it's how we deal with these problems that defines us. The university has multiple great resources for dealing with these sorts of issues. The Wellness Center, Barnwick, well-trained residential staff, devoted professors and deans, just to name a few. But as I said earlier, I am here to bridge a gap between students. Students, it is up to you to look out for each other. We cannot use this notion of a Sewanee bubble to ignore the real-world struggles that our students face every day. Some students choose to cover up their emotions with substances. While that works Thursday through Saturday, the Sunday morning church bells bring with them a palpable emptiness. Some lock themselves in their dorm room and attempt to handle their problems away from anyone who they fear might judge or even mock them. What I encourage everyone in this room to do about their emotional problems is what very few of us are lucky enough to do. Sit down and talk with someone on a real, genuine level. The Sewanee experience is terrifying, and who is ignorant enough to believe that they can handle this alone? I was lucky enough to be raised in a family where emotional discourse was a daily activity. I'm comfortable enough with my emotions to discuss how I feel with anyone who is willing to listen. Like, for instance, right now I'm pretty nervous talking to all these shiny, happy people. But are you willing to listen to your friends? It's a two-way street. It's very hard to be vulnerable at first, but when you open up and have a real conversation with someone, the therapeutic benefits are immeasurable. The most unfortunate aspect of this gap between students is that those students who need help the most are never going to ask for it. They're not going to call the Wellness Center. They're not going to go talk to one of their APs. They're too scared to do that. They think it would make them not cool or it somehow debase them. You need to push them. If they say they are okay when you say they are not acting like themselves, ask them again. When they again refuse to open up, go sit down somewhere in private. Try opening up yourself. Find power in your vulnerability. Soon you will realize that everyone around you has the same fears, the same problems, and usually the same hopes that you have. Do not let the only real conversations you have while here on this beautiful campus be restricted to drunken, half-remembered late-night cry sessions. Everyone around you is fighting a battle that you know nothing about until you ask. The human spirit thrives on genuine and deep conversations with those around us. What I would like to leave you with about bridging the gap is this. We only see a tip of the iceberg as far as most students go. Diving under the surface is difficult, but when you see someone as they really are, you get the unique opportunity to look at them with nothing but love and compassion. I know you will not leave this room and immediately dive into an emotional conversation with the person sitting right next to you, but I also know this. You have a friend on campus whom you love and about whom you are worried. Whether they have been acting different, or you know about troubles at home, or you're worried about their substance habits, everybody knows someone who needs help. Maybe not tonight, maybe not this week, but soon I beg you to sit down with them and talk to them on a real level before it's too late and before they can't deal with their emotional problems in the correct way and they blow up and have to leave campus. You may not get a lime green Camaro out of it, but I promise you, these conversations improve your life, their life, and the Swanee community. Thank you for listening. Happy birthday, Beyonce.
Okay. Hey y'all, my name is Ricca. I go by Ricca, and some people like to call me Ricca May. I don't know why. So yeah, I'm here today to share my Swanee story in ways I think that you all can bridge the gap at Swanee. I'll begin by telling you all how I got to Swanee. I was in the 12th grade, taking a computer class as an elective. I loved chilling out, taking pictures, eating hot chips, and not really doing my work. Well, one day, my teacher called me playing in her class, and she was like, Ricca, you need to do something on a computer because it's looking like you're not doing nothing in my class. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go to the Common App and apply to schools. And of course, I applied to Swanee because it was free. I love free stuff. So I later got the opportunity to visit for free during Multicultural Experience Weekend. Multicultural Experience Weekend was the start of my Swanee experience. I got a free t-shirt, and I met Arthur, one of my closest friends. So I think each and every one of you all can bridge the gap at Swanee by doing just that. Well, not just getting free stuff, but making friends and building lasting relationships. So yeah, as a freshman, I quickly found myself on the struggle bus at Swanee. I realized that I was not academically or socially prepared for college. A little lost, I went to people who I was most comfortable with. I've always looked up to successful African Americans for guidance. People like Jessica Hardy, Miss Johnson, Professor Robertson. Oh wow, I'm crying. Mr. B and Miss Barbara helped me so much my freshman year. They helped me with simple things like supporting my candy addiction by having candy buckets in their office. Helping me write a paper when I thought I couldn't even come up with a topic. And being just able to be dramatic in their offices, crying all day. So, y'all, this could go on and on, but I've said all of this to let you know about the great relationships you can make at Swanee. Okay, so now I got to stop. Hashtag, shout out to my set, where y'all at? Okay, so, yeah, when I think about bridging the gap, I think of all of you all. As a sophomore and a junior, and I guess now senior, I became very active by being a member of the Multicultural Outreach Board and working in Res Life, first as an AP, then as a proctor. My goal has always been to not only recruit multicultural students, but be that positive influence that helps them stay and actually succeed at Swanee. So yeah, if you're still wondering how to bridge the gap at Swanee, do exactly that. Find ways that you can support your classmates, especially the freshmen. And let me tell you, there are many ways to do so. I honestly believe that there is someone, or at least something, for everyone at Swanee. In closing, the advice I would give to all students, especially multicultural students, is to be yourself and stay true to yourself and where you come from. Don't be afraid of growth or question it whenever you return home. And please, share your crazy Swanee experiences with many people back at home. You never know. Your silly Swanee stories about a night on Bacchus, or that one time you got to twerk on stage with Chingy. might be their motivation to step outside of their environment and go to college. Thank you.
I'll try to get you all out of here by 1:30 because I have plans to do it. So I'm Nate Foster, and I'll preface my thoughts with this. Advice is nothing more than carefully directed nostalgia. It's memories that have been cleaned up and repurposed, salvaged in hopes that one might find guidance in their story. We're so quick to shell out money for advice from magazines or books when we're often surrounded by it in our daily conversations, and even more often, we neglect our own advice we give to others. If you can succeed in following your own advice, just let me know how, because I'm trying to get it. So, freshman year. I'd begun pledgeship, I was in the EMS class, and that Sunday I was working in Winchester on an ambulance as part of the required clinical rotation hours for the EMS license. Later in the afternoon, we got a call for a 68-year-old diabetic male who was down, which is a term in emergency medicine meaning they were in cardiac arrest. We got on scene, put him on a backboard, there was a sheriff there already doing CPR, and began racing to the hospital. Now this was all a blur, but I can remember it so perfectly. This was my first code, but somehow I didn't hesitate with anything. Anybody in EMS or in ER can describe this experience as well. It just flowed. I did CPR for almost 20 minutes, but felt like I could do 2 more hours. We defibrillated, the body jumped, no pulse, continue CPR. He was pronounced dead at the hospital shortly after 7 p.m. I went back to my dorm room shortly after 9. One of my pledge brothers across the hall asked how it was. See anything crazy? He asked with an excited tone, like trying to get that gruesome story. I told him, yeah, we had a code. Oh, did he make it? Nah. Like, dang, you win some, you lose some. Oh shit, dude, I'm sorry. Yeah. Well, you missed study hall. We've got house cleanup tomorrow, and make sure you bring your pledge pack. Also, we need to have all their names memorized, or we're in big trouble. That night, I didn't memorize names or hometowns. I called my mom and dad just to say hi, ask how they were doing, and that I loved them. I'd just been to that edge of that precipitous and cavernous gap between Swanee and what's beyond those gates. It was scary, not because I'm scared of death or dying, but because that gap was so close. What was even scarier was how quickly it disappeared. I started to question my own morals and emotional availability, trying to understand how I could go from touching a dead body to breakfast in McClurg with no pause, and I certainly didn't view this as emotional strength. Quite the opposite, really. In hindsight, it was incredibly easy at Swanee because, as a freshman male, I wasn't supposed to be spending energy with those thoughts. No. Instead, it was, how can I assimilate into this frat, into this group of people that, aside from all wanting friends and this social niche, we really had nothing in common. But this takes an incredible amount of energy to look and act the most average you can be. The more #basic you are, and oh yeah, it applies to guys too. The more #basic you are, the less you have to worry about your appearance and demeanor, and the more you can focus on who you're talking to. Yes, who, not what, who. Don't believe me? Stand in the home line in McClurg at noon and tell me you heard an engaging and substantive conversation about getting drunk last Friday. This carries into sophomore year, and at least my experience it did. Now that you've completed a year of college and you're 19, you've got it all figured out. You don't, I didn't, and I'm impressed and skeptical of anyone that has. Sophomore year, I moved into the EMS house and began the greatest next 3 years of my life thus far. My work gave me a purpose, and my peers gave me a family and a home away from home. However, these gaps in my life started forming. School life, social life, EMS, frat, on call, out partying. I felt equal pressure from both sides. Spend time with us. You're going there? No, eat with us. You should really be studying. Come to the house. No, hang out with us more. And it became exhausting, because rather than trying to fill these many gaps, I put entirely too much energy into trying to appease both. Quickly, everything became an obligation rather than a choice. I am this person. I am this identity, so I must do these things. The thing is, I am not just one thing. Nobody is. It's inaccurate to say, I'm a Sigma Nu, or I'm an EMT, or I'm gay, I'm a biology major, I'm pre-med. No. I'm Nate. And these things don't exist by themselves in a vacuum, nor do I let myself be defined by any one in particular. By junior year, I realized that I couldn't live by others' expectations of my life. My checklist is not your checklist. And becoming happy started when I stopped thinking of others and what they thought they wanted from me. I talked to who I wanted to ate where I wanted to eat depending on my mood, and generally didn't care about others. But this is not selfishness. It's the opposite. Because by doing this, I was only then able to tune into other people's lives. I could give my friends the energy they deserved, and I wasn't wasting that energy on myself stressing out. I've realized that you can't force different groups on campus together. Recently, I've heard a lot of discussion about the apathy of students to